Hi everybody, so we're looking at page 20 this afternoon, which is degrees of the scale and intervals. So from the beginning, exercise 1, it says each note in brackets is the first degree of the scale. It is the key note of the scale. After each key note, write the note to match the degree that is written below the stave. Remember, the first degree of the scale is called the key note. So what are we actually doing today? So there are two types of interval that we're going to look at, and they're discussed here, okay? So firstly, an interval is the distance between two different notes. So for example, on the piano, if we were to have this note and this note, the interval is the distance between the two notes, okay? So any distance between two notes is called an interval. Now, there's two types of interval. We have the melodic interval, which is where we have one note followed by another note. So they're announced, they're heard at different times, one after the other. The harmonic interval is when we get this, and if you can see here, we've got two different notes, but they are written on top of each other because they're heard at the same time. So melodic intervals, which is what you've got there, would sound like this. So melodic meaning melody, meaning tune. So it's like a tune, okay? And harmonic is when we get them both sounding together, okay? Now, underneath it says, you can measure the size of an interval by counting the number of degrees of the scale that it includes, okay? So basically, this is a numbers exercise, okay? What I've done here is just written my scale, repeating. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, then obviously it goes back to A, as you know, and then so on and so on and so on. Having that will help you with this exercise, okay? As it discusses here, it says in grade 1, the examples always have the key note as the lower note, so you count from the bottom note. So in all of the exercises, the bottom note is 1, okay? And then you count up these. So for example, let me show you on the keyboard, it's just as easy to recognise. So we've got our first note there, which we've got a G on the piano, okay? So we've got our 3 black notes. We identify the white note in between, which is a G, okay? Now, G to A is a second, okay? This is following the example that's on the page, on page 20 as well. So G is 1, going up another step, 2 is an A, and that's called a second interval, okay? This is a third, okay? So 1 is your key note, 2, 3. Okay, that's why we do when people are singing, when they say things like I'll sing in thirds or sing in thirds. That's what singing in thirds is. Yeah, the distance between the two notes is always 3. So 1, 2, 3. So B to G, G to B is a third. G to C is a fourth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. G to D is a what? G, A, B, C, D. So that's a fifth. D to E, G, A, B, C, D, E is a sixth. And I'm going to play an F sharp for the 7th because we're in the key of, I'm going to play in the key of G major. Now you know the G major scale, we've done that before. So the 7th note of G major scale is an F sharp. So that's the 7th. And then the 8th, also known as an octave, okay? G to G, 8 notes. If we have a look at that on that page, this is what I've just played. So G to A is a second, G to B is a third, fourth, so on. 8 VE is what we mean by octave, okay? So the G to the G there, it's 8 notes apart, the interval is an 8th, okay? So, having a look at this exercise 2, give the number of each of these melodic intervals. So you just need a number. If you do any looking online about intervals, there are going to be lots of things like perfect fourths, minus sixths, augmented fifths. You don't need to worry about any word terminology before the numbers for the time being. For grade 1, you just need to do the numbers, okay? So the first one is given for you. So we've got an F going to a B flat, and the answer is a fourth. So F, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so F to B flat is a 4. Okay, it's a fourth. Now you can also do it if you write out your scale as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you're just counting letters, and as it says here, It doesn't matter whether it's an accidental, whether it's a sharp, whether it's all flat, because you're just counting the numbers, okay? So remember, as long as you remember that the first note is always 1, you'll be fine, and you're counting the distance. So this one here is an F. What note's this? So that's an E. So F to E. F is 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So F to E is a 7th, so you'd write 7th in there. On the piano, F to E, F to E. That's what a 7th sounds like, okay? Now, all of these that we're doing here in exercise 2 are melodic intervals, melody intervals, tune intervals, because it's one note followed by another note. It's not the two notes on top of each other, okay? When we look at exercise 3 on page 21, this is where we get the harmonic intervals. You can see it there. So harmonic intervals, because they are creating harmonies, two notes played at the same time. So like it says for exercise 3, you draw a semibreve on top of the note that's already written, okay? The thing to remember is, that the note that is written is the key note, so that is 1. So key note equals 1. So the one that's done for you here, D major, we've got a D because it's basic clef, remember, we're in D major. D is 1, it's asked you to draw the third above it. So 3 above D, go back to your little alphabet again. D is 1, 2 would be E, 3 would be F. It's F sharp because we're in D major, so you've drawn your F on there, okay? On the piano, how does that sound like? Well, there's our middle C. So bass clef notes are further down, they're lower. There's the D, which is the key note, number 1, and the F sharp is the third. 1, 2, 3. It's an F sharp because the third note of D major is an F sharp, not an F natural, as we worked out in last lesson, okay? So, going back to the exercise 3, second example, so a 7th. So D is the first note. You need to draw the 7th above D, okay? So you can count up using the spaces or the lines, or you can just use your alphabet. D is 1, which is the same for all that first line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you need to write a C above that D. So it's not below, it's above, because you're counting up the stave through the spaces in the lines, 7 places to the C. It's actually going to be a C sharp, but because we've got it in our key signature, remember we talked about key signatures last week, so that affects any F or any C on this line. You don't need to put the sharp sign in for the C sharp because it's already there, okay? Same for the 5th, count 5, D being 1, 2nd, so D is 1, what is number 2? And then same for the 2nd line, okay? So 2nd line, C major, you've got all middle Cs to start with here, apart from this one, okay? But you're always using the bottom note, the note that's given, as your key note. So this one here, with our middle C, you're counting a 5th above it. So on the piano, middle C, so above middle C by a 5th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's a G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're going to draw a G in the first example here, okay? This one here, that is not a middle C, but it's a higher C, isn't it? F, A, C, if we're counting our spaces. So it's a C, and it wants to know what's the 4th above that C. So that C is your number 1, count 2, 3, 4, draw the 4th one on top of it, okay? So that's those first exercises there, looking at melodic intervals on the exercise 2, which is notes next door to each other, like a melody, like a tune. This one on exercise 3 is the harmonics, because they're being placed on top of each other, okay? Exercise 4, to finish off with, it says, look at the melodic intervals marked with the brackets. Write the number of each interval. The first note is the key note in every case. So whenever you see a bracket, so for example, this one here, this one here, this one here, this one here, that is 1, okay? And then you're just counting the steps to get to the second number, the second note in the bracket. That number, the distance that you've counted, is the answer. So in the example, we've got a middle C as 1, and we're going up to an E. So C to E. Refer back to your alphabet or your keyboard or your anything that you've got with your notes written on. C is 1, D would be 2, E would be 3. So that's a third. So the answer there, as they've put, is a third. Okay. Next one. First note's a C, second note's a D. So what distance is that? Okay. And I'm just going to do this one here for you, because not all of them start on middle C. But remember, the first note is the key note, and then we count up to the second note, and that distance is the answer. So first note is a what? G. Second note is a what? E. G to E is the distance. G to E is the distance. G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, C is a 4th, D is a 5th, so E therefore is a what? That number goes in there, okay? Same for all the exercises below, okay? Let me know how you get on, and I will go through the answers next